Chain Gang All-Stars is freaking fantastic, and you should read it. I'm Rebecca, and let's talk about Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's very high action, very violent and bloody. It is a deathmatch story about convicts pressed to go into these battles with one another for potentially their freedom. But it's also a really smart, cutting commentary on the prison industrial complex, among other things. It's not even just that. So going into this, I had very high expectations because I had previously read Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah's short story collection, Friday Black, and that was phenomenal. No relationship with the name, but Black Mirror always comes to mind when I think of that short story collection. They're very similar in the ways that they're engaging with slightly near future settings in order to shift our perspective on things that are happening now. Social commentary on those topics is being rolled out for the reader from a new perception, slightly. And it's just close enough to reality that once you get there to what it's trying to say, the messaging really hits home. And I absolutely loved that collection. It engaged with the topics of capitalism and race and exploitation in so many different nuanced ways. So coming into this, as I said, high expectations, and this really did deliver on all of those things. I fully expected it to hit us with similar topics, and I've kind of already mentioned that it does. We are looking at this and getting such a panoramic view of our story here, where these convicts have been really pushed into roles that they maybe didn't have a choice, or felt they didn't have a choice, or it was their only good option. And we see that beginning from the start of one of these convicts coming into the ring for the first time. We mainly follow two women who are in these death battles, these chain gangs. And we see the first one as she's coming in scared, and she builds into this really powerful figure who is almost running one of these chain gangs, because each of the sort of penitentiary systems have their own chain gang of stars that are battling for their freedom in seasons. These seasons have been turned into a sport, an extreme sport with massive followings and fans. And to get this panoramic view of the world, we're in the heads of some fans, we're in the heads of journalists, we're in the heads of protesters who are against this as sort of a concept of the exploitation of these prisoners. And we also follow these few prisoners, some that are in the process of heading toward this as their future, some who are actively going through the battling and traveling with their chain gangs. There is a whole concept where they sort of go on tour almost, where they're just walking through these areas and they're very controlled by technology and what they can do. And the technological aspects are very additive to this story, because as with Friday Black, we have just a slight near future that technology has enabled the oppression of these people even more so than today. However, as you're reading along with this book, and this is where things were so intelligently rolled out for the reader, as you're reading, you start to see this high action plot play out and get little footnotes here and there. And increasingly, it becomes apparent that the footnotes are depicting real stories, real things that are happening in the world, references to actual history in reality, to actual policies that are currently oppressing people, the horrors of the prison industrial complex. But not only that, we're hearing about the things that are increasing inequality in our world, getting past all of the violence. The most horrible thing about this book is those footnotes. It's so damning to us that these things are going on every day in our prisons, and they're just sliding by. These people are being forgotten, are being mistreated, are being oppressed, are being abused are innocent and yet never see freedom in their innocence. And it's just horrifying. So this is almost a horror story, even though it's really an action thriller type plot. It's got that emotional social horror to it as well, because you are just jaw hanging to the floor at some of the details here. And none of them were overly surprising to me. It was just that layered aspect of seeing into the lives of these people as they are going through this, and having that set up against, in parallel, the real factual information, and feeling like it should be so jarring, but it isn't. So that feels very convicting as a reader, to go through this reading experience and feel helpless as a result of what can we do to change this. We also see a softer side to this, and I think that was really important in playing out this story that's really gruesome and violent, is that we see the couple characters that we get very close to and in depth to. We see people around them in a sort of found family. We see them trying to find hope and life in whatever space they can, make space for themselves. We see a sapphic relationship play out here between some of the convicts that are fighting. And so we do see them try to eke out some freedom for themselves in their lives in whatever space they can during this time. And that just feels so human and hopeful, even when there is virtually no light at the end of the tunnel for these people. You know that the majority of people here are almost certain to die. Anyone who does get out with their freedom as a result of sort of winning the championship of these fights means that they will have basically been surrounded by friends or people they knew that have died along the way. So it's very harrowing to read through that and know and have that looming behind you, the deaths of their compatriots around them, even if they had these close bonds. So I think balancing the humanity of these people was gotten across so expertly and just beautifully well by the author. In addition to the aspects of injustice within our justice system, this also does a great job of portraying the sort of toxicity of social media and influencing, because, as I said, they're kind of going on tour at times and being surrounded by fans, going to events even where fans are flocking to them in this very toxic way, where they are being completely dehumanized over this sport, and people are subscribing and paying lots of money to stream these battles and treating their deaths as something both personal and impersonal. And it's a very strange sort of parasocial relationship the fans come to have with these people, even knowing that they are most likely going to die, and not thinking about that aspect in a humanizing way. And I think that was just so introspective. As a person who is already pretty critical of social media and tries to not engage with it too much, even as I'm here on YouTube, I found I got new information, new takes on that topic of just how difficult it is to be involved in social media in that sort of fandom aspect. And I just think that was bringing a new, fresh perspective to the topic in this book. So I loved how this rolled out the story, in that it's very compulsively readable, that you can read it at a surface level and get an enjoyable story. But behind the scenes, there are so many layers and so many different ways of looking at this story that are given to you as the reader, that I just think this was a masterful story. And so I heartily recommend it if you can get through the graphic and gruesome violence that is depicted here, because it is quite a heavy load to take on if you're going to pick up this book. If you aren't someone who reads as graphic of stories, then this author might not be for you, because the short story collection as well did have some pretty graphic content. But if you can overcome that, this is an author who I think is becoming an auto-buy author for me, even though we've only got one debut short fiction collection and now a novel. I will be definitely on the lookout for anything that he comes out with next. So that is it for me today. Thank you so very much for watching.